Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of She Knows Arsenal, another live show. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel and getting into the chat and letting me know how you guys are thinking and feeling. Happy Tuesday. I'll be honest with you guys, I never know what day it is anymore. They just all run together. But happy Tuesday. I'm super excited to talk to you guys about a couple of different Arsenal news items, some transfer rumors, things like that. So yeah, and we're going to be talking about Zubimendi. You guys know that's who I want to come to Arsenal. So I'm excited about the news that I'm going to share today. But let's see who's all in the house. Let's see who's all in the house. Trini Gunner says, "Oh, the clickbait, Jazz." I mean, I don't know if it's clickbait. I go onto the internet and I see what's written, and so it's not like I pull these things out of nowhere. If it's out there and it's written by a credible journalist, then it's kind of like it's out there and it's written by the credible journalist. I think, um, you know, if they say that the agreement is close and that the pre-agreement is close, then that's basically what it is, I think there's like this idea that like anytime that we talk about transfers, the person that's reporting it or the person that's doing the content is just lying for clicks. Like, I'll give you guys the sources if you guys want it, but it's my responsibility to talk to you guys about it, whether you believe it or not. That's kind of up to you. Wilson says, "Hello, Jess." Wilson in the house. Hello, welcome, welcome. Tamina says, "Hi, Jess. How are you doing today?" I'm doing really good. Thank you so much. Nostradamus says, "Remember when we signed Lucas Torreira thinking we got a gem?" I don't know what happened to Torreira. But it was like 1 minute he was a like pretty good player, and the next minute he was just like not. Like, Torreira is just another mystery. We buy these players and I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes it feels like the player is good, and then all of a sudden they just fall off of the proverbial cliff. So Mr. Happy says, "Who are we signing?" And Blaze says, "Hi, Jess. Hello to you as well." So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. So the first thing that I feel like we need to talk about is something that's a little bit more topical and timely, because some of the transfer rumors that we are talking about today are not necessarily January based. They are based for the summer, as far as I'm reading. But Amy Lawrence, who does the handbrake off podcast, was saying that Thomas Partey should be back soon or making an appearance soon. Because yesterday we had spoken about there was no real update on him. There was an update on Declan Rice. There's also an update on Yuri and Timber, but there was no update on Thomas Partey. And so she was basically saying that she anticipates Thomas Partey making an appearance soon. The timeline on it was supposed to be Nottingham Forest. Now, I don't know whether he's going to be available for Nottingham Forest in terms of a starter. I think he is training. I don't think Arsenal want to put that out there too much because remember, he was supposed to be at AFCON, so he's supposed to be injured, so I don't necessarily feel like, until Ghana are like out. Are they out yet, you guys? They may be out now. Are Ghana out? Maybe they are. But until like there's like a little bit of time passed. Like, I don't think Arsenal wanted to make it seem like they held him back so that he can train to be ready for Arsenal when he's the captain of Ghana. Do you know what I mean? So Amy Lawrence was saying that he should make an appearance soon. And Charles Watts also said the same thing, that he should be back for Nottingham Forest. I think I saved that tweet. Which, yeah. So it says the plan, from what I've been told, which is this coming from Charles Watts, is that Thomas Partey is expecting to be training this week and is still targeting being involved in the squad versus Forest. Arsenal are going to manage his return carefully. And so we don't play until Tuesday. So that's a week from now. And so that's plenty of time for, him to train up, to be ready to be a part of the squad, to go away to Nottingham Forest. Again, I don't expect him to start. He hasn't played in a very long time, since Manchester City. That's a long time. That was like 3 months ago. So maybe 2.5 months ago. So it's been a while. So I don't expect him to start, but hopefully, he's in the squad so that we can have another option. I know a lot of people have been holding their breath for this elusive midfield three of Odegaard, Declan Rice, and Thomas Partey. So hopefully he's fit enough to play against Forest, or at least make an appearance. So I wanted to put that out there as well, because I know that we're talking about things that are kind of like summer based and long-term future and stuff like that. But right now we need players, to play in this Premier League season, because there's still a season to play. And I think there has been a little bit of like not a negativity, but a little bit of like a downer for the seasons. Like everybody's thinking about and talking about next season, or checked out of this season because we've went out of the domestic cups, and we've fallen away in the title race a little bit. There's still a season to go, so you know let's stay clocked in, let's stay locked in for this season because we still have games to play. The Arsenal Perspective says we need a full roster of current players ASAP. Astro Julie says evening all. P White says Jess, Sophie, come on you Gunners. Boy says fake news Partey. Blaze says Jess, Ghana already out. Yeah, Ghana are out, but you guys know what I mean. Like even when they were just playing like the other day, like it was only like a day or two like that they were playing. So before that, I don't think it would have been in. I think it would have been in poor taste to have got like Ghana still playing in that tournament and Thomas Partey in training videos for Arsenal. Does that make sense? You want to make it seem like he really did not go because he could not play, if that makes sense. So I can understand why we haven't seen a lot of Thomas Partey in the training videos, but you would imagine that if he is available to play against Nottingham Forest, that he's been training before that, because he can't have just been started training for a week, so that's what I'm saying, that you have to kind of time it. Same thing with like Saka when we kept him from going away with England. You have to kind of play the game a little bit and okay, yeah, he's injured, but now we can start having him in training photos and things like that. I do think Thomas Partey has been training for a week, Set Nessie says we should have let Partey go in the summer. Listen, I do feel like we should have let him go in the summer and reinvested that money and the money that we spent on Kai Havertz in a world-class midfielder. I think that would have solved so many of our problems. If we just had one other world-class midfielder to play with Odegaard and Declan Rice, even just like a top quality one, we would be in such a different position. But right now we have a midfielder that we spent a lot of money on that hasn't really made us any better, potentially made us worse. And then you don't have the option of using Thomas Partey because he's not available. So some of the decisions that were made, if you think about selling Thomas Partey for even like 20 million and you add that to what you spent on Kai Havertz, that's like 85 million pounds that could have been used to buy at that point any midfielder bar like the top tier, and I don't think it'll take a lot to make us play a lot better in midfield. I think we have quite a few players that, are just good in certain game states. They're inconsistent, they're talented, but not quite there. Just imagine if you just had a Bruno Guimaraes in there. He's not even like a world-class midfielder, but just imagine if you had him in our team or a Paquetá in our team or something like that, So I just feel like we've kind of made a big mess out of left center mid. And so now people are grasping at straws. It's like, we'll move Zinchenko there. We'll, let's rely upon Emil Smith Rowe. Let's, people are starting to be excited about Fabio Vieira coming back. I just think Arsenal are going to have to go into that transfer window in the summer and rectify what they should have done in the summer, this past summer. But from now until then, I think we need to hope that Thomas Partey can maintain a level of fitness, because we've seen with Jorginho in midfield with Declan Rice, it's worked. The chemistry is there. Is it good? You guys, Kieran Tierney is coming off this pitch right now. I don't even want to say it. I want to say it. There's 123 of you guys in here right now. I am literally watching Real Sociedad play against Celta Vigo, and Kieran Tierney is coming off that pitch injured. So I'm just a sidebar. I don't want to hear not a single person ever again telling me that we should have kept Kieran Tierney in this team, because if he's injured now, he will have been injured for like almost the entire beginning of the season. I'm like, what the fuck? But yeah, like from now until the end of the season, we just kind of have to hope that Thomas Partey is available, because, you would imagine that if Jorginho, Rice, and Odegaard works in most games, that if you just replace Thomas Partey for Jorginho, that will take it up another notch, because Thomas Partey is better than Jorginho. I feel like that's okay to say, So yeah, I think the Thomas Partey news is a good one. But thinking about the summer, Um, we've spoken a lot on this channel about who Arsenal need to go after in the summer. Who's going to replace Thomas Partey / Jorginho, because there should be another midfield overhaul, in my opinion, because if you're going to lose, Noel Nenny, Jorginho / Thomas Partey, either one or both of them are going to leave in the summer, then that leaves some room for some quality to come in. And I really do think Arsenal need to get this right. And that's what leads me into my first little bit of news here, which is that Arsenal are said to be close to a pre-agreement to buy Martin Zubimendi from Real Sociedad for this upcoming summer window. And so I woke up this morning and I saw this news and I was like, oh, that sounds nice, because for me, this is the player that we should be getting. If you can't go out and get, the Frankie de Jongs and Barellas of the world, which I do feel like Arsenal should push to try to convince to come to Arsenal. I still feel like we should aim higher. But if you're going to bring in anybody, I think bringing in somebody outside of the Premier League that has the skill set that we need, that's basically a more robust version of Jorginho, is probably what we need in order to get the best out of Declan Rice. Declan Rice plus a player like a Jorginho-esque type of player is the perfect balance for Arsenal. And then that allows Odegaard to go a little bit further forward. I've spoken about this a lot. I really do think Arsenal should play a 4-2-3-1. I feel like it just makes the most sense with the players that we have, and to kind of limit this 4-3-3 because it's just too convoluted and it doesn't suit the players that we have as much as I feel like it should. And so Zubimendi would be a perfect pivot player next to Declan Rice. Now, I know some people are not as keen on Zubimendi because what they think is, oh, you bring in a Spanish player from La Liga, they're not going to be able to hack it in the Premier League. I don't necessarily believe that. I think that players that are less physical can be successful in the Premier League. Not every single midfielder in the Premier League is a bruiser. We know that. We watch them on a daily basis. Not everybody is a bruiser. You just can't be like, super weak, if that makes sense. Like, you just can't be like, and this player is more, to me, he's more physical than Jorginho. And Jorginho's been able to play in the Premier League. He doesn't have the legs, but Zubimendi does have more of the legs. Like, he can run. He can catch up to somebody. Do you know what I mean? And he also has the ability to evade pressure. He can kind of jink around different players and kind of get around pressure, which is something that Jorginho can't do, that Thomas Partey can. And so I can see why Arteta is really interested in bringing in Zubimendi, because he has the football brain that you need at the base of your midfield. You need a kind of like a deep line playmaker, somebody who can unlock the defenses, somebody that's the yin to the yang of Declan Rice. I feel like we're missing that a little bit, because when you have Havertz in there, it's not like he's playing terribly or anything like that. It's just you need another set of feet. Like, you just need another midfielder in there. And I feel like Arteta galaxy brained our midfield just a little bit too much. And the simple thing to do is to have 3 top quality midfielders in your midfield that can all do good jobs, that complete each other. I think, Martin Odegaard and Declan Rice could be a lot more effective together if they have another footballer in there, not a second striker in there, not a, like a forward type player in there, if that makes sense. And last season when we had Xhaka in there, I think we maybe underestimated the amount of work that he was doing in there, especially with his ball progression. You have a great ball progressor in Zinchenko at left back. I'm a big advocate for Zinchenko in games where we feel like we're going to have a lot of possession, because he just adds an extra body in midfield, an extra pair of feet to like progress the ball. He's one of the best progressive passers in Europe, but you can't just have him and Declan Rice progressing the ball in midfield. And then when you drop Odegaard back so that he can help progress, there's nobody up there to do the Odegaard job. You actively are losing something, no matter what you do, no matter how you move the pieces around. In order for Arsenal to get that overloaded midfield that we utilized so well last season, you have to have 3 midfielders and Zinchenko coming in. Right now, we only have Declan Rice and Zinchenko trying to progress the ball. And if we want to bring in somebody else, you have to drop Odegaard away from his natural position. So, and it's not like Havertz is bringing in any sort of creative aspect to the game. He's not adding anything really beyond that extra run. if that makes sense. So we just need to get that balance back. And so it's about fixing the mistake of the summer and not just bringing in this player to begin with. I'm not quite sure why we didn't do it, but I feel like this link in itself probably shows that Arsenal understand that they made a mistake, and that they need to rectify it as soon as possible. And then, Aegon is saying Zubimendi will play left 8. If you guys remember, like, I don't even think about it that deeply in terms of like, oh, he's not really a left 8. So when Jorginho and Rice were playing with each other against Liverpool, it wasn't really like a left 8 versus a DM. They were popping into those positions. They played it really nicely. Sometimes Declan was a little bit higher. Sometimes Jorginho was a little bit higher. It wasn't really about the left 8 and the DM. They worked together to create that balance. And then Odegaard could be a little bit further up. That's all I really care about. 3 midfielders that complete each other, that really balance each other out, and you cover all of your bases. That's all I really care about. So it's not really to me about left 8 per se. Like, I don't think Zubimendi is a left 8, but I do think he would be a good complement to Declan Rice, which is all that matters, you know? Let's see. Super Well says Zubimendi and Tony can play 4-2-3-1 to perfection. I really just think that that's just the right thing for Arsenal. 4-2-3-1, keep it simple. Declan Rice next to Zubimendi with Odegaard in the pocket. That also suits Emile Smith-Rowe better. That probably suits Havertz a little bit better. It suits Fabio Vieira a little bit better, because what Arteta has built is a team full of number 10s and a team full of DMs. Until he buys true number 8s, and a couple of them at that, his 4-3-3 is never going to work, I feel like, the way that he wants it to work. You can play a 4-3-3 with creative players in it, but they cannot be Havertz, Like, that just doesn't work. And Emile Smith-Rowe's best qualities are in and around the box. And asking him to do that defensive work is like, just buy a number 8 then. If you want somebody to do that role, buy a number 8. But he's constructed our midfield in a way where it's just 6s and just 10s. And if that's what you have, then you probably should just play a 4-2-3-1, because that's all you need, Trini says, is Declan Rice a 6 or an 8? He's neither. I think he can do both roles. Like, we've seen him do both roles. I feel like to me, it's more, what do you want Declan Rice to do on that day? Do you want him to sit in next to somebody a little bit more, or do you want to see him be able to be more adventurous? The only way Declan Rice can be more adventurous and use some of his skill set as far as ball progression and carrying the ball further forward is if you have another DM in there, which goes back to the 4-2-3-1. So Declan Rice to me is more of a number 6, but I also feel like people are being a little bit harsh on Declan Rice, and he's only 25 years old, just turned 25. He can definitely evolve more as a player from now until he actually, he's 25. He could be 28, 29, and we can see a completely different player based on how he develops from here. And so just because he's not super creative, or, he's not as refined as maybe other players that we see in that position, he has so much talent that you just have to figure out what you want him to do. I feel like Arsenal need to kind of land on a primary position for him. I don't think he should bounce between 8 and 6 forever, but he can do either, I think, depending on what you really want from that position. But I do think that people are a little bit harsh on a player that's only just turned 25 and kind of decided that this is who they are. I remember Rodri was really poor in his first season at Man City. A lot of people were like, is this guy going to make it? He doesn't look good enough. Oh my God, Fernandinho so much better. And he's actually come leaps and bounds. Like, what is he, 28 now? Something like that. How old is Rodri? He might be a little bit younger than that. Yeah, he's 27. So he's been there for 3 years or something like that. So give him time. I feel like, yeah, we've spent a lot of money on Declan Rice. And so the idea is that he should be the finished article, or be damn near the finished article. And I don't think he's going to, become I think he can get better, but I'm not saying that he's at the beginning of a 21-year-old. I'm not saying that, but he definitely can get better from here. He needs some refinement. He's been playing in a Moyes system for a long period of time, so he needs to be able to develop a little bit more. But I feel like the price tag is making people feel like, oh my God, we've made a mistake because we bought this guy and he's not the end all be all to all of our problems. I feel like a big reason why we bought Declan Rice is because not only does he have the ability to get better on the ball, but his the physical aspects that he has are things that you cannot buy or you cannot teach. I mean, like Rodri's never going to be able to like catch up to people. He's not going to be able to run people down. He's not going to be able to recover the way that Declan Rice does. So you have those raw attributes already there, and then you just have to refine it and make it better. You know, he's only 25. Give him a couple more years. I've said this before that it took Thomas Partey a couple of seasons to really nail down that lone six role. It did. It took him time. Nobody can revise history on that. He was not the player that he was last season is not the player that he started off as. Not only because his injuries hampered him from getting like, consistent games, but he just wasn't the same player. He had to learn how to play that lone six. He was not a lone six when he came to us. He was a number 8. He was more of a box to box, and Arteta taught him how to play that position. And oh, by the way, he had Xhaka next to him who helped him out a lot. So give Declan some time. Give Declan some time, but at the same time, Arsenal have to surround him with the right player, and I don't think we've done that. I think we've done Odegaard and Declan Rice a massive disservice by not having that other midfielder there when you had the opportunity to bring him in. So this is the opportunity, and I think having this potential pre-agreement for Zubimendi would be perfect because it should just be done. Now, obviously, Arsenal are going to still have to compete with the likes of Bayern and Barcelona. I'm not really worried about Bayern, but obviously Barcelona would be a massive, competitor for his signature. But I still feel like Arsenal would have a really good opportunity to bring him in. But yeah, Martin Zubimendi is very close to accepting an offer to join Arsenal in the summer on pre-agreement. And so we just have to see how this unfolds. Now, this could be on the devil's advocate, this could be the Spanish media trying to, maybe this is his agent or something like that, putting this out here to get Barcelona to act. Oh, he's about to go, he's about to sign, he's about to, make sure that you come and get in here. Or it could just be, because the other part of the article did say that Barcelona have started to look at alternatives. So I'm open to both things, that maybe it's just a little bit of agent play, or maybe Barcelona really are looking at alternatives because they know they can't get Zubimendi. Arteta can pretty much convince anybody of anything. So I do think he can get Zubimendi to come to Arsenal. And I feel like this might happen. Sean says, when the Havertz deal was agreed to, Partey wasn't injured though, and when Partey was fit, he was the one partnering Rice and Mo, not Havertz. When the Havertz deal was agreed to, Partey wasn't injured though, and when Partey was fit, he was the one partnering Rice and Mo, not Havertz. That's not necessarily true. We started off the season with Martin, Odegaard, and Rice. That's the midfield that we started off with. Arteta, unprovoked, started off the season with the midfield that we've seen most of the season, which is included Havertz. So Arteta, with unprovoked, played Thomas Partey at right back. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I think Arteta premeditated this idea that he was going to have an inverted fullback. Right, Havertz was going to play this free role or this, second striker role. Maybe Thomas Partey was going to invert from one side, and it didn't work. It didn't work because it's not a good idea. You have too many players playing out of position, and it was just a galaxy brain idea that didn't come to fruition. But his priority was not to play Declan Rice and Partey together, because in my opinion, when you have a new center midfield partnership, and your center midfield partnership is the most important thing, it's the most important thing in your team. Your midfield has got to know how to play with each other. So if you've broken a midfield that has played together for 80 games in Odegaard, Xhaka, and Partey, if your priority was to play those two together, you should have from minute one been playing that midfield. And he didn't. His priority was to invert from whatever side and to play Havertz and Odegaard and Rice together. That was his priority, in my opinion. So I don't necessarily agree with this whole idea that the whole plan was always to play Declan Rice and Partey together, because you would have done that from the very beginning. Remember, we played 3 or 4 games with Partey at right back. Not only that, Partey, unprovoked, played right back at the end of last season against Nottingham Forest and Wolves. I was there, So unprovoked, Arteta played Partey like 5 or 6 games at right back. This was something that he actively wanted to do. I feel like people forget that he did that at the end of last season when Rice wasn't even here. He always wanted to do it, you know? Here to there says Arteta was trying his best to run Partey out of town all summer. Review all the transfer links. Partey just wouldn't go to Saudi. We spoke about this. If you guys were here over the summer, there were a lot of people that were mad at me for even suggesting that we were open to selling Partey. Just because it's not something that you would do doesn't mean that that the club thinks the same way that you do. You know, like most fans would not have wanted to sell Thomas Partey, so they deluded themselves into thinking that Arsenal were not open to selling him. And then when we didn't sell him, they were like, "See, Jess, he was never going anywhere." I'm like, he was very much so on the chopping block. He was very much so in the transfer window. And the only reason why he didn't go is because, like you said, he wouldn't go Saudi. And the team that he probably wanted to go to, which was Juventus, couldn't cobble up more than 15 million for him. Partey is definitely somebody that I don't anticipate staying any longer than this season. He's very much so a player that Arsenal are open to letting go. I don't know why people were deluding themselves into something different. And if he's your best and most important midfielder, like a lot of Arsenal fans feel, why would you move him to right back? You do not move your most important player out of their position. You just don't. Not out of your midfield. It doesn't happen. It's not a thing. You don't. Like, not unprovoked, not when Ben White is available. Arteta had Gabriel and Ben White available at the beginning of the season, and he chose to put Ben White at center back, chose to put Gabriel on the bench, and Thomas Partey at right back. Unprovoked. Like, this is what he wanted to do. He wanted it, you know? And he'll probably, the thing is that hopefully he decides to do something a little bit more simple and get Arsenal back to basics from now until the end of season so that we can get as close to our goals as possible. So to me, the closest to getting back to basics is pretending that Rice is granite, putting Thomas Partey at the 6 role, and just getting back to some normalcy, allowing Odegaard to go further forward, because as much as people may be frustrated with Odegaard's, performances, I do think that there's a lack of like empathy for the fact that he's playing multiple roles. Like most creative midfielders don't have to drop deep and basically be a playmaker from deep and receive the ball off of the goalkeeper and progress the ball, because left center mid doesn't do that role. Odegaard is playing a deeper role to compensate for Havertz. So if he could just get back to only having to create, maybe he wouldn't look the way that he looks. I also think Declan Rice is going through a bad patch of form because he's been asked to do too much. We've spoken about this. For the first 10 games or so, he was Superman. He was doing it all. A twosome cannot do the workload of 3. Not when our midfield was so good last season, and the work that midfield did, we're not getting anywhere near as the same amount because we have one less person in there, even with Zinchenko pinching in, So it's Arteta just galaxy brained it too much. And now he has to untangle this web because Arsenal need to get their attacking players going. And I don't know, maybe it would help just to have like a stable midfield that's more balanced. That would help them out. But you need something, because the way our attack is right now, I know that we scored 5 goals against not Nottingham Forest, against Palace. But if we are honest, we still weren't quite seeing the level of like consistent pressure and chances created and things like that we probably want to see, So from now until the end of the season, got to hope that Thomas Partey can maintain some level of fitness. And also maybe you can get a little bit of something out of the Emile Smith-Rowe and the Fabio Vieiras and stuff like that from a creative standpoint. And then from there on, you have to figure out what midfielder you're going to bring in to rectify the mistake that was made this past summer. And that could potentially be Zubimendi, because he kind of fuses together the Thomas Partey and Jorginho role into one person. And then Arsenal still need to bring in another midfielder on top of that. And maybe that midfielder is Ezequiel Fernandez. Arsenal are linked to Ezequiel Fernandez from Boca Juniors. who is a player that I've never heard of in my whole entire life, but now I'm going to be a freaking expert um, and talk to you guys about him. Ezequiel Fernandez is a midfielder playing for Boca Juniors. He's Argentinian. And he is 21 years old, and Arsenal are said to, be interested in scouting him. I do think we'll see a lot more of these types of links pop up because of the new scout that we have that we took from Real Madrid. And what I'm also expecting is for us to act on some of these. I don't necessarily feel like the goal or the priority is to bring in young players from South America and make them into stars, but I do feel like it is strange that we see everybody else poaching top talent from those leagues and we're not doing any of that. It just helps cut out some. You don't have to go out there and spend hundreds of millions and give it to Brighton and West Ham and teams like that if we're able to get those talents ourselves and nurture them and grow them ourselves. And so I just feel like there's certain like there's certain recruitment things, like it's the first team, it's the academy, and then it's bringing young players from under untapped resources or untapped leagues or whatever. And I feel like we're underperforming in every single one of those categories. I don't think we're getting enough out of our academy. I don't think we're getting enough out of the first team recruitment. And we're definitely not seeing enough of that creative recruitment where you have a scout go out there and bring you the next Martinelli. They go out there and get you a Saliba. They go out you and get you a Cesc. They go out there and get you a Bellerin. Those types of players can save you so much, And so it's about finding the next Saka from your academy, finding the next Martinelli from your from Brazil or South America. And we haven't seen a lot of that. I don't think it's again, it's not the number one priority. The first team recruitment is the priority, but you can make the first team recruitment a lot easier if you can utilize your academy and those other leagues, like those lower leagues where you can recruit from. That can make first team recruitment a lot easier. Right now, we have to recruit so much and we're using so much resources on players from the Premier League and overspending, when you can kind of maybe look at those other leagues and say, okay, in a couple of years, we'll probably need this player. Can we find them in another league and develop that player instead of giving Brighton 80 million for that player in a couple of years, So this player looks pretty decent. He is a center midfielder / DM type player. Doesn't look weak or anything like that. I was watching some of his comps today. Definitely can ride a challenge, can pick a pass. He looks very, very talented. He looks like the type of player that Brighton will go get and sell him to us for 100 million. So I'm not surprised that Brighton are also very interested in him, and other teams in the Premier League are interested in him. But I feel like Arsenal should probably get some of these types of players in, not because it's oh, we just need to get a wonder kid from South America already, but because it will make recruitment a lot easier if you can poach some of these players, and their fee or their price, their valuation for him is 15 million euros. So again, it's not as expensive as it would be to pay Brighton for this player in a couple of years. But he looks great. I don't have a big, I don't watch him every week, so I'm not going to sit here and act like I do. But I'm happy to see these types of links. And then when I actually look at their comps, they look great. Because again, when I looked at Marquinhos' comp, I knew he wasn't going to be good. Because if your comp is not good, you ain't good. It's your best ever actions. He did not. When I watched Martinelli's comp when we first got him, I was like, damn, that kid is good. Yeah, it's 4th tier Brazilian league, but this guy looks good. His comp was it. It was good. Martinelli looked like a player. This guy looks like a player when you look at his comps. Marquinhos did not look like a player. No, he did not look like a player, So I'd be really interested in seeing some of these types of players come through. Here to there says Boca Juniors. That's real pedigree. We need to be there getting that type of player. Let's see. The Arsenal perspective says, if we're not performing in all 3 areas, who or what do we need to rectify? I mean, the academy, that's Purr's thing. And so it's hard for me to gauge whether or not the academy is producing top quality talent and Arteta's just not integrating them into the team, or if we're not developing the right type of talent that Arteta can rely upon. I can't really tell you whether or not, like, which one it is. Either way, it needs to be fixed. If we're recruiting or like not recruiting, if we're developing top quality talent and Arteta's not able to figure out, is that Rafa Benitez? Um, if he can't figure out a way to integrate it, then, you know, that's something that needs to be looked at. Because again, Arsenal, it's not just about the history, but it's about using all of your resources to the best of your ability. Also, when you have academy players, if you have them in your team for 2-3 seasons and they can show a decent level as a squad player, you can actually turn a profit on those players. I feel like we've seen that with like Emil Smith Rowe and Reece Nelson might end up being those types of players, you know. But are we seeing enough of those players? Are they being utilized enough to actually turn the profit that we should be getting? You know, so everybody has to work together to get the most out of what we have. And right now, I can't really tell if Nweri and Miles Lewis Skelly and Will Walters are just not as good as we think they are, or if they're good enough to kind of be in and around the squad and Arteta just can't figure out a way to integrate them because that's not his priority. Right now, in terms of the scouting and the recruitment outside of our academy, I'm waiting to see what this new guy does that we poached from Real Madrid. I expect that to pay dividends because Real Madrid have been able to go to Brazil and get the likes of Vinny Jr. and Rodrigo and Militao and turn them into top quality players in their team. Think about how much money Real Madrid has saved just by being able to do that. And yeah, like Vinny Jr. and Rodrigo, they didn't cost pennies, but if you had to buy them now on the market, you would be paying a lot, you know? And so I think that Arsenal can also use that to their advantage. Just one or two of those players coming through every once in a while can save so much. And we've seen that with Martinelli, right? And then in terms of first team recruitment, you guys know if you guys are new here, because there's 220 of you guys in here, smash the likes and subscribe and set notifications. But for people that have been here before, you guys know my feelings on Edu, but just to like remind people, I don't dislike Edu or anything like that, but do I think that I think our recruitment is somewhere around a B to a B minus if I had to give it a grade, you know, in terms of, you know, the types of players that we brought in, the types of players we're not bringing in, the amount of wastage, you know, things like that. I think our recruitment is somewhere around a B to a B minus. It's nowhere near as good as people are making it out to seem. It's not, you know. I feel like there's just been too many players that have come in and been awful, you know, and we haven't been able to get anything out of them. And then there's players that we brought in that I feel like I'm like, okay, you know, they're good, but they're not great. You know, they're just all right. And then, you know, there's the over reliance on the Premier League and overspending and that, you know, not selling players for any fees, always canceling contracts, you know, looking reactive instead of proactive, things like that, you know. I think, you know, Declan Rice is a great signing. I think Timber will be a good signing. I think Odegaard was really smart. You know, but there's been some players that we brought in where I'm like I guess like my thing would be, okay, well, why have we bought so many goalkeepers, but we haven't found the guy yet? You know, why is it that we spent 25 million on Ramsdale, which was a lot back then? And I'm not even sure that we'll get that much back when we sell him because we don't sell well. But how is it that we spent so much money on goalkeepers and haven't found the guy? How is it that we spent so much money on left back, but we haven't found the guy? How is it that we haven't brought in a top quality striker yet? You know? So I think that Edu is a good technical director, but I don't think he's outstanding. I think he's just middle of the road. And I think Arsenal deserve the best in the business. I think Arsenal should look beyond people that have played for the club before and get the best in class. I would sacrifice not having an Arsenal man leading us to get better quality of technical director, if that makes sense. So I don't think the head of our academy needs to have played for Arsenal. I don't think our manager needs to have played for Arsenal. I don't think our technical director has to play for Arsenal because that means that the pool of people that you're pulling from is so much smaller. And so we think we're getting the best, but I don't think we are. And I don't think there's like this added benefit for getting people that have just played for the club. I think the added benefit is getting the best in class. And if Edu's not that, then we need somebody better than that. I said when Luis Campos was available, we should have like dumped Edu and got him in because he's just a better technical director. He just is. PSG are terrible, but some of the players that he's been able to bring in, some of the top quality talent that he's been able to bring in. I wish we had been able to do that, so it's yeah, I don't hate Edu. I don't think he's terrible. I just don't think he's the best, and I feel like Arsenal need the best. Um, you know, and we have just too many people that are running the club that are just new at what they're doing. Like they haven't really had the track record, and so this like the line eating the blind. They think they're all doing a good job, but are they? It's kind of like I wonder what the conversations are like, between Arteta and his technical staff or like his coaching staff, because nobody's really done it before, except for maybe Stuyvenberg. Everybody else is a child, so what are these conversations? you know um let's see. Jude K says Liverpool have resurfaced because of smart signings. They have a better squad than us now. Nuances of Fate says Edu can't even sign a decent winger from Brazil. People have no idea how hard that is to do. Max says maybe we should sell someone from that valuable squad that we've amassed thus for. Hype train pulling out. Graham says the club needs to do more to get the elite to the elite level. The board are comfortable being top four. Need to have a clear out in the summer, especially with players who are injury prone. I mean, I'm all for moving on players that are injury prone. I don't ever think they don't change. They don't change. They don't. You know, and I feel like it's just it's literally always going to be a problem. So it's only a matter of time before Tomiyasu gets his next injury. It's only a matter of time before Thomas Partey gets his next injury. It's only a matter of time. And the thing is that we could have been just fine if we had, like, Thomas Partey would not be that big of an issue if we didn't rely upon him as much. If you had just bought the right player to play left center mid and balance out that midfield, then we wouldn't feel like we need Thomas Partey. Because the thing is last season, I feel like one of the main reasons why he played so many games last season in the league is because he didn't play in the cups. He didn't even play in the Europa League or any of the cups because we had to protect him, right? So he can only really play like 30 games a season in a season where we play like 60 something games, And so he cannot be somebody that you expect to play every single game because you've effed up and spent 65 million on somebody else. And so what we do is we build our team around these injury prone players. We have Zinchenko is injury prone. We're very reliant on him. And we're also relying on Tomiyasu because you can't rely on Zinchenko, and he's injury prone. Jesus is also injury prone, but our system is built around him because if you don't have him, you're playing with Nketiah, and then you have Thomas Partey. So get rid of injury prone players. I agree with you. Like, move them on. We need a big clear out and we need to be ruthless. And I feel like Arsenal are never ruthless completely. They're ruthless when it's unnecessary. Like, I don't think they needed to be that ruthless with the goalkeeper situation. I don't think they needed to, we're very heavy-handed sometimes when we don't need to be. But when there needs to be a heavy-handedness, like moving on Nketiah, moving on Reece Nelson, moving on these guys that don't help us, they don't do it. So there needs to be, I think some, like, if we don't win anything this season, like, they really need to, I feel like, not necessarily throw everything out, because I don't feel like what we've built is trash. I feel like some people go too far where they're like, the project didn't work, so we need to just throw it all away. We have some real top quality players in our team right now. We have a good core group of like maybe 7 or 8 players that we really like. I really rate, personally, me. I really rate. So I don't want to lose those players, but you will lose those players if you keep relying on the other players that are not a part of that core to get us over the line. And if you don't start having checks and balances around the club in terms of, okay, so we missed out on this, so who needs to go in order for us to move somebody else in that's going to get us closer to where we want to be, because I don't want to lose that core group, because that core group is really good. I really think that the team is very good. They're not as good as they can be, but there's reasons for that are not necessarily their fault. Saka, Martinelli, Odegaard, Declan Rice, those players are fantastic. Gabriel, Saliba, fantastic. Ben White, when he's not fucking peroxide hair, great player, the players that we have questions about are, who we have questions about. The Arsenal just need to get fucking real and buy players to replace them, move them on, and then look above and say, okay, is Arteta going to take us to the promised land or not? That's all. I don't feel like we're that far away. I really don't. I just feel like Arsenal need to be a little bit more, they need to be willing to make the hard decisions to get us to where we want to be, you know? Um, Stu Mix says Rice is shit. He gets torn on counters. Okay. Saida says the main issue with our club is having inexperienced people at all levels. Until we bring in the best or some sort of experience at board level, will not progress further at a faster rate. I agree with you. I agree with you 110%. Like, I just don't feel like we need to have inexperienced people at every single level. And when you have such a young team, we still have the third youngest team in the league. You need to underpin that major group with experience around them in the team, in management, in the technical director. We need more people that have experience, The Arsenal perspective says Jess is not checked out. She has standards set high. I have not checked out. I have not checked out. Like I said, from now until the end of the season, we need to have as good of a team as we can possibly have. Hopefully Thomas Partey can stay fit. And that will help us. That will give us the boost that we need, hopefully. And then we can see how far we can go. But I haven't checked out. We're not going to buy anybody in January, I don't think. So I can't really talk about any players that we're going to bring in. And we're out of domestic cups. So that's a reality. And we have 2 chances to win trophies. And both of those are going to be very difficult. So I'm just keeping it real. I haven't said anything about, I'm not checked out. I just do feel like there needs to be a little bit of a reality check. We're not fighting on all 4 fronts. We haven't been that great in the Premier League so far, that can turn around. But, I feel like I'm just very relaxed about things right now because I know like either we turn it around and we win something and we have a great season, or we end the season and we don't hit our marks. And then Arsenal can make some very, I feel like, easy decisions that could get us to where we need to be if they're willing to be ruthless when it counts. That's all it is. Let me take that down. Lexus says, everything you've said are some of the reasons why I'm so critical on the club management from top to bottom. For all the good things that have done, there are some major failings. And I feel like that comes when you have a lot of inexperienced people. I feel like you make big mistakes on the job. And so we have so many people making, like, I think they're trying to do the best that they can with not really a lot of knowledge on how to make that happen. And so it probably takes them, especially when you have people that are also arrogant. When you're new, you kind of have to be a sponge and be willing to like, okay, tear apart your ideas and be like, okay, that didn't work out. So let me change it and learn from my mistakes. I do feel like we take a long time to learn from our mistakes, or we never learn from them because we're hell bent on making sure that like this is going to work. And that is the biggest, that's the biggest complication. And when you have so many people, that are new trying to do things, you don't really know when you're making mistakes. Sometimes you keep going because you don't really know you're making the mistake. Sometimes you have to start all over because you made the mistake. Like there's just a lot of trial and error, where when you have experienced people, they kind of know, okay, when this happens, this is how you cut it out. When this happens, this is how you fix it. And that's why I feel like you see like a manager like Klopp, who's to me the best manager in the world. He can sense a problem and react to it before it even happens. He can sense the danger. And if things do fall apart, he's able to fix it quicker than Arteta is able to, because he's been there and done it before. So that's just, the question always has been whether or not Arteta is generational. And in order for him to be able to compete with Pep and Klopp at this level, he has to be generational. That's just it. He's not going to be able to be just a good coach and be able to win things. It's not going to happen. And with such a young team, you have to have an even better manager, because you don't have you don't have a KDB in your team. You don't have a Rodri in your team. You don't have these players to get you over the line. You don't have a Gundogan in your team. You don't have a Bernardo Silva in your team. So almost everything would have to go in your direction, positively to make it happen. And so, yeah, the question was always whether or not he's generational or not. And we're gonna find out whether or not he is, because in order to compete with Pep and Klopp at such a young age, so new, you would have to be a like generational talent as a manager. You can't just be okay. You can't. Even Klopp, as good as he is, only won one Premier League so far. So it's tough. It's tough. I think Arteta is a good coach. I think he's a very good coach, and I think he could actually rectify some of the problems that maybe he's created on his own by just kind of maybe admitting defeat just a little bit and saying, okay, we're going to go back to some of the things that we did last season and almost risk some of maybe conceding a little bit more to get more out of our most important players, which are our attackers. You know, I think he could do it. My biggest fear is that Arteta will only change when he leaves Arsenal. He'll stick with his ethos and his ideas and his philosophy here, and then if and when he leaves Arsenal, then he'll change. That's it. Because he just needs to. Yeah, he just has to make some hard decisions, or just tweak things just a little bit. We're not that far away. I don't think we're that bad. I don't think these players are that bad, even with Havertz in the team. Even with Havertz in the team, if you could get Saka and Martinelli and Jesus going the way that they were last season, we're fine. You just won't. Winning Way says Arteta don't know how to handle big profile players. I'm not even concerned about him dealing with big profile players. I'm concerned about him dealing with the young players that he has right now that were playing out of their skin last season. He can't get anything from them now. So even the big profile players, the big personalities, I mean, that's not even really a big thing for us right now. I don't think we have to go out there and buy the biggest of personality player right now to do anything specific. Like, I really just feel like we need to make the right decisions in the transfer market, make sure that we're actually upgrading the positions when we actually buy the people. Arteta needs to get the most out of what he has. He has to let his guard down a little bit, let his ego go a little bit. That's beyond even like the big personalities conversation, you know? Max says his fans wanted him out last season. Aegon says, yeah, but that's due to his experience. That, the only way for him to compensate for his lack of experience is to be generational. That's as simple as it is. To be so good and so special that you don't need the experience to compete. And the likelihood of that is very unlikely. It's a 1 in a million chance. And he's not that guy. To me, he's not that guy. He's very good. And he'll probably end up being the type of manager that in 10 years or so, he'll come back to the Premier League and be the best. But he won't be at Arsenal, It's hard. Jude K says, to get our forwards going, we need to own the midfield and apply constant pressure like last season. The Gunners for Life says a game-changing CM in Havertz place will win Arsenal every trophy available. I don't think we're as far away as people. I agree with Gunner for Life. I feel like if we had just made the right signing at left center mid, we wouldn't be having half of these problems that we're having. I really do think a lot of it stems from that signing because there's a major ripple effect on everything that we do because we don't have that key piece. And Xhaka was a load-bearing wall for us. He did a lot of shit. There was somebody that actually sat there and tried to tell me that Xhaka only scored goals and made third man runs. That's all he did last season. You guys weren't watching. You weren't watching. If you think that all Xhaka did, the only thing we needed to replace from Xhaka was somebody to make third man runs, you weren't watching us last season. He actually passed the ball double the amount of times that Havertz does in a game. But oh, by the way, the types of passes that Xhaka made were more progressive passes than Havertz. Most of Havertz's passes are not progressive. They're wall passes. Xhaka would actively pass the ball to Martinelli a lot. He would switch the point of play. He did a lot of shit. And so we took out a load-bearing wall and didn't replace it, and people are surprised that the house is falling down. But if you just put somebody else in there that can take that load, I feel like, or I think it would help quite a bit. We still need a striker, but those things could be rectified in the summer. We could easily buy another midfielder and a striker in the summer. We can. We'll lose the season. The season will be a lost season, but we can rectify it. We can. Um, so yeah, Trini says, just what would you do to fix Arsenal with 100 million and player exits? If I only had 100 million, I would buy. If I only have 100 million, then I got to spend wisely. So who do I think I could get for 50 million? I mean, we could definitely get Zubimendi and a striker, whether that's, he's not my favorite, but Tony or, freaking Sesko or somebody like that. I genuinely don't think that people understand how bad our center forward situation is. It's so bad that I don't actually think you need to bring in a world-class striker to rectify it, because both of our strikers are in the top 5 of XG underperformers. So just get somebody that actually hits their XG would actually probably just help us out, So we probably won't get Osimhen. He already made his decision, he said, and I think his decision is probably to go to Chelsea, right? So if I only have 50 million, then I'm probably going to spend that on like a Tony or Sesko or something like that. Let's put them in there. Let's just put them in there. Let's say Sesko. Then I buy Zubimendi, that evens out our midfield, and I'm 100% moving on like Eddie, get him out, like move him on. I'd also move on freaking one of ESR or Fabio Vieira, not or both, if they can't show the levels. Probably Emil Smith Rowe would be the person that would get the biggest fee, so I'd probably move him on. I'd move Thomas Partey on. I'd move Jorginho on. I only have 3 exits. I'd move on like 5 or 6 guys, to open up room for other players, But for sure, I'd bring in a striker and a midfielder, and do what we should have done in the summer. And then, yeah, for sure, the players, for sure, I'd move on Eddie, one, if not both, of Jorginho and Thomas Partey. And like the Cedrics and the El Nenis and all those. I'd move on Ramsdale as well. No reason to keep him around. We have a lot of players that we can move on, Here to There says, sell Eddie. If not going to play ESR, sell. Try everything possible to loan Havertz, get some wages off. Unknown None says, play Jesus as a winger. I was talking to a friend about this as well the other day. I was like, well, that was a really nice goal. Who is this? That was a really nice goal. I don't know who that player is, but yeah, Real Sociedad just scored another goal. But I was talking to a friend about this. If Arsenal were really serious and really ruthless, they would move Jesus to the wing and bring in 2 strikers. But we probably won't have the money to do that and bring in a winger and bring in a midfielder and, but I love Jesus. I do. But I feel like we're not that far away with Jesus having a conversation about his long-term future at Arsenal. And I feel like it's better to replace players before it becomes insanely obvious to do so. And I don't think he's looked great since the knee injury. I think if he continues on from now into the end of the season the way that he has been this entire season, then he will have had 3 or 4 good months at Arsenal, and that's it. And I feel like, as talented as he is, if he's not the player that he was last season, and he can't replicate that, then I do think you have to move him to the wing and make sure that you have 2 really good strikers in your team, because if your main striker gets an injury, you're relying upon an injury-prone, not as good as he was pre-injury Jesus, that also has probably the psychological thing in front of goal now, because he went out in the media and said that he doesn't score goals. So, yeah, if Arsenal were really ruthless, they would do that. But I don't think they have it in them to make sure problems don't arise before they become a problem. What Arsenal will do is they'll bring in a striker, keep Jesus as the other striker maybe, And then that player something will happen to them and we'll have another season of relying upon Jesus. And next season, we just can't have that. Next season, if we have to go through a stretch of games with Jesus as our striker, we're going to have the same problems that we have right now. Not because Jesus is not talented, but there's a reason why Manchester City moved him on, is because when he does not score goals, like he doesn't score enough goals, and he's injury prone, so I don't think Arsenal will do it. I don't think Arsenal will bring in two strikers. We have too many other things to do. But this is what I talk about, being ruthless. When Arsenal were sitting around trying to bring in another goalkeeper, they could have been bringing in another attacker. They could have taken one other thing off of the list. They could have taken the winger off of the list or the midfielder off of the list or whatever. Now that list is still long and we still maybe have a goalkeeper problem. But now Jesus is not looking like the guy. Now we have to figure out what's going on with Zinchenko. We can't be proactive because we're still trying to fix shit that we should have already fixed, if that makes sense, Unknown None says the fact that Ivan Toney is forcing Arsenal to sign him and said they won't win the league shows how ego he is of himself. He's really arrogant, which is what you need to be a striker. It's just whether or not he can back that up. He needs to be able to back that up. Let's see. Here to There says Trossard is very good, underrated player. He has a place in rotation here and basically any other team in the world. Winning Way says Gabby ain't first choice next season. Watch. It's obvious he's not going to be first choice because we will buy a striker, and that player will play above him. They have to play above him or else there's no reason to buy a striker. My fear is that something, again, like what happened with Timber, where we bought Timber and we thought we had solved our Zinchenko problem and he's injured. And now we still have the Zinchenko situation. They need to be so far down the list that it's like they're almost like a bonus. Injury prone players that have major flaws have got to be right down the list. Right down the list. They cannot be somebody super important to your team. They cannot. And right now they're still too important, Kathia says, but we need a right center back, a right back, a left center back. If Kivior leaves, 6'8" striker. Okay, no. I don't think we need all of that you're saying. I think there's priorities. I feel like we can upgrade in almost every single position. I think there's a difference between we could upgrade on a position and we need this position. There's priorities. And so I don't necessarily feel like we need all that you're saying. That's like basically the whole team. We need a striker. We need a winger. We need at least one midfielder. That's what we need. If we can address like left back or something like that, maybe we could do that. But like we have to prioritize, because the thing is that there's certain types of players that if you put in your team, you can paper over the cracks. Defenders can't paper over the cracks. Attackers can. If you have 5 or 6 top quality attackers in your team, you can carry a bad defender. You can carry a bad defender because you have somebody up there that's going to score more goals than the opposition. So if you got a Rob Holding back there chucking the ball in the back of his own net, it's okay because you have top quality attackers that can bail you out. But right now we don't have enough attackers to bail us out. So we need to do that first. We need to get at least 2 attackers through the door. We need to solve our midfield problem. And then you can start looking at the other shit. The defenders, having to buy 2 or 3 defenders in the summer, that cannot happen. At the very most, we should buy 1 defender in the summer. At the very most. Because we have not even started to look at the forward line. We have somebody from our academy. That's great. Saka is great. You have Martinelli that cost us $6 million, but that tweet will always be true. Arteta has spent $50 million on the attack and it shows. More of our money needs to go further up that pitch. I do not want to see 2 or 3 defenders through the damn door. 1, maybe. Whatever money we have before sales has to go forward. Then after sales, like if you sell some players, then you could bring in a defense. I feel like that's how you need to do it. If the first person that comes to that door is a defender, I'm going to be so pissed. I'm going to be so mad. Get attackers through the door, through the door. Aegon says Tony 60 million, Neto 50 million, Zubimendi 50 million, Diomande 30 million. That's a really good window. It's a window that solves a lot of our problems. It's definitely not the window that we should be having right now, though. The window that we should be having now is the Virgil van Dijk Allison window, but we can't get to that window because we have to keep rebuying. You know what I mean? But that's a decent window. It's not, it's a good window. It's not an amazing window. It's not the window that I want. I wish we were at be able to go get a Frankie de Jong and a Osimhen window, but we're not there. So, but I like that window. That window's cool. That window's okay. It's just not amazing. Let's see. I'm just checking to see. Yeah, that's a decent window. And if you're gonna bring in Ivan Toney, which he would not be my number one choice, you have to get him for 50 million or 60 million, nothing more, because he's in the last year of his deal, and there's no reason to get him if he's not a deal. So yeah, Mr. says that's the window we should have had in the summer. It is the window that we should have had in the summer. We should have had that type of window in the summer, but now we have to redo it. All we had to do this past summer was to bring in a Xhaka replacement, maybe another winger. We didn't have to do what we did. Second Soj says he bought Kai, shocking acquisition, but you didn't include it in the attacking spend. But you didn't include that in the attacking spend. He bought Kai, shocking acquisition. What does that mean? Aegon says, I'd rather get Osimhen and Frankie de Jong 100 million each, but it won't happen surely. But I mean, we can't do that now because we have too many other things that we need to do, because we've bought too many players that need replacing. And, so this will be, if we buy a left back, this will be the third window in a row that we buy a left back. Because Timber was playing left back. So as far as I'm concerned, you bought him as a fullback that can play on both sides. So you bought Tavares, then you bought Zinchenko, then you bought freaking Timber. And then so you'll go into this window and buy another one. That's nonsense. That is nonsense. Absolute nonsense. I think in every window we bought a goalkeeper as well, maybe as well. I mean, we bought Ramsdale, we bought Turner. Now we bought Raya. So we bought goalkeepers in almost every single window. We bought left backs in over every single window. We're starting to rebuy in the same position quite a few times. So it's, make these ones count. Make these ones count. I'm done. I'm so done. I don't want to see another left back. Tashima says Havertz is the money he wasted in attack, basically. Yeah, exactly. Lionide says Partey back and we will rise from the ashes. Hopefully. I hope he gives you I hope he gives the team the boost that everybody says that he's gonna give. My theory is you're never as good as you are when you're injured. Whenever somebody's injured, they're the answer to your prayers. They're the ones that are going to give you the boost. They're going to change everything. And I hope that he is that, for us, because we need a major boost. We're not going to bring anybody in this window. In my opinion, I don't see us bringing in anybody that's going to transform the team or take us up a couple of levels. So again, you're never as good as you are when you're injured. People that are injured are always on a pedestal, always, especially with this fan base. So I'm hoping he does, but the likelihood of like a Timber and Thomas Partey really changing our fortunes from DM back I don't really think it's going to do that much. I think it'll balance the midfield, but it won't. I'm not sure it's going to be as big of a jump as people are making it out to seem. It could be a boost, but I don't think it's going to be like all of a sudden we're going to start looking like, the team of last season. I don't see that. I still don't see that, because even when he was here, when we played in the Community Shield, we were okay in that game, but I'll be honest with you guys. I still just feel like we felt timid in that game. I know you can't go out and play against Man City. Like, I feel like that's something that we've always kind of said. It's like, well, you can't just go out and play City. But I feel like the main issue that we have is not just personnel. Like, Thomas Partey will give us a boost, but unless Arteta loosens the handbrake, we're still going to be playing this timid style. That's how I kind of feel, when it was Declan Rice, like we had almost our best lineup out there, bar Jesus against City. And I still felt like we were playing kind of within ourselves. We weren't really cutting them open the way that I felt like we looked like we were playing like very timid, you know. Arteta needs to let go a little bit and allow them to feel free to do things in the front, in attack, Saida says, I know we managed to get Rice because we finished in the top 4, but just from looking at the rumored players we're linked to, I still feel like our window gives Europa League level, no shade. Yeah, it's like a top 4 window. I wouldn't say it's a Europa League one, but I would say it's like a top 4 window. It's not the window that takes you from like a title, like top 4 to winning the title. It's definitely, I get what you're saying. It's none of those players are world class that we're talking about buying. Neto is a top quality young player, but not necessarily world class, injury prone as well. Zubimendi has a lot of hype around him, could potentially be something really special, but he's not, world class. Tony is not really it, whatever. So I get what you're saying. I think a lot of us would prefer us to be at the point where we can bring in that elite level player to our team, 1 or 2 elite level players, but we're just not there. We're not going to be able to do it. And I kind of feel like Arsenal continuously unfold, like they get close and then they unravel shit so that they could do it all again. Like, it's annoying when we get really close to being able to do that. They don't tend to get it done. Like Suarez, like the Suarez thing, the 40+1, it was like all we needed was Suarez. And if we had just spent the money, we could have won so much. But we did nonsense and said 40+1 and embarrassed ourselves. And then he goes to Liverpool and is fantastic, So it's like Arsenal get very close to having be 1 or 2 players away, and then we unravel it somehow. It's so strange. Second Soj says, never really rated Vlahovic, but he's having a good season, to be fair. Unknown One says, imagine spending 70 million on average players. We didn't spend 70 million on average players. We've misspent in some directions, but if you're going to sit here and pretend like all of the players that we bought have been average, you're lying. The thing that I don't like is when people are upset about Arsenal, or they don't like the manager, or they don't like what we're doing, is that they lie unprovoked, or they make generalized statements about everything. We're not as far away as people are making that seem. We're not terrible. Our players aren't terrible. They're not all average. Like there's no way that we're all of our players are average and we are where we are. There's just no way, so they're not all average. I like specificity. I'm very I get really turned off very quickly with the generalized statements because I'm not happy. So I just say anything. I say things like Rice is shit. Rice is not shit. He's very far from shit. All of our players are not average. Saka, Martinelli, these players are not average. Ben White is not average. These players are not average. Saliba's not average. Gabriel's not average. Odegaard's not average. These players are not average. Thomas Partey is not average. So I don't like generalization because you're upset. Specificity is key. We have bought some bad players. We bought some bad players, but we also bought some very good players. The key is that Arsenal need to get to a point where almost every single one of their players, like 80% of their signings, need to be good. And right now we're at about like maybe 60%. So Arsenal need to figure out a way to make sure that they're getting more hits than misses. Lately, the misses have come a lot more frequent, but I'm a big advocate of specificity and not just saying things for the sake of it because I'm not happy. Because all of our players are not average. Sean says people love to conveniently ignore context when it doesn't fit their generalized statements. That's so ego driven. I think it's just based on like when we're not in a good place, you can say anything and people will back it because they're emotional and they're like, it's just how people are online, when we're not playing well, if you say Saka shit, you say Martinelli shit, you say Odegaard shit, people will just agree with you because they're upset. And that's why whenever we go through bad runs of form, everybody just loses it completely. They just lose it completely. They say anything and everything and it just flies and no one pulls them up on it. And that's just not, I just don't, I can't, because I don't believe that these players are average. I think they need one or two other players to complete the team and get them. This is a team that was very close to winning the league last season. They just needed 2 or 3 top quality signings to get them over the line. We didn't spend $700 million on average players, and that number keeps weirdly going up, and it's not even $700 million. Next time we have a bad run of games, it's going to be, oh, Arteta spent $1 billion. That number keeps creeping up as well, and it's again, specificity, people lying unprovoked. People lying unprovoked is just it's a strange thing. We're not in the best run of form. We're not as good as we can be, but these players are not average. Not all of them anyway. Some of them are. So yeah. Trini says Neto is Premier League proven. He is Premier League proven, and Arsenal like that. So I feel like that's why Arsenal would go out and get him. The problem is he's injury prone, and so how much are you going to spend on him? I wouldn't spend more than 40 million on Neto because he's going to inevitably be injured for a significant amount of time. In almost every single season, he's injured for at least 30% of it. So I wouldn't want to pay 60 million for a player that he also, like, as good as he is, his end product has never been anywhere near Saka or Martinelli's. Now, he's never played in a team as good as Saka and Martinelli, but this is where I expect Edu, if he's going to go out there and get Neto, not to just give Wolves 60 million. You need to be able to say, fuck you. He wants to come to Arsenal because we've already tapped him up. So he's injury prone. He doesn't play every single minute. And so far, the numbers that he's put up, he's more potential than actual, end product. So 40 million. That if you go out there and you give them 60 million for a player that is going to inevitably miss 30% of the season due to injury and hasn't scored more than 4 or 5 goals a season, then we haven't learned our lesson. Stop giving them exactly what they want. But that's what happens when you buy in the Premier League, is you end up paying a premium and you have to hope that the player is perfect. Neto is not perfect. I would spend no more than 40 million on him. No more than 40 million on him. Go out there and negotiate. Actually negotiate the price down. He's not worth 60 million. He's going to be injured. Alexis says, I personally don't think some of the players are of the level needed to perform at the very top. Equally, I don't think they're so bad that we couldn't win the league, so it's on the manager. And that's exactly how I feel. I don't think some of our players are at the level that we need. But I also don't think we're so far away from being able to win the league with the players that we have. Again, we have a core group of 7 to 8 players, 7 to 9 players, I feel like, that I truly believe in. But you probably need 4 or 5 more to either as starters or squad players to really round that out. And so Arsenal would do themselves they would go a long way to just buy a top quality striker, a top quality midfielder, make sure that they have, the shit that they need, another winger. That would get us a lot closer, But yeah, again, I just hate the way we act when we're not in a good period. It's like they say anything about these players, and some of them are very, very good, and they need other good players around them, and the club let them down. The club let them down by not getting a striker and or another top quality midfielder. The club let them down. They still need to look at themselves in the mirror. I still think some of them are playing shittily, and they need to look in the mirror and say, look, you're playing shit, bro. You need to get your shit up. You could play a lot better. But to sit there and say that you think that we spent 700 million on average players when some of the players that you're speaking about almost won the league. Some of them scored 15 goals in one season and were in team of the season, Ballon d'Or nominees, stuff like that, is just a lie. Let's be specific. We have some average players in our team that need to be moved on. Let's see. Mr. Happy says, I don't know how Edu and Arteta is still allowed to be in charge of transfers. well, who's going to sack him? You know, the Cronkies feel like the project is going fine. We're in Champions League. We barely missed out on winning the league. It's full of young players. The Cronkies feel like everything is going fine. So who's going to move? Who is going to stop Edu and Arteta from doing their job? If the Cronkies would have to sit in, they would have to come in and say it's not good enough. And I don't think they think it's not good enough. They still feel like we're doing the right things. We have a lot of very inexperienced people running this club, including Josh Kroenke. He's in charge of Arsenal. Stan Kroenke doesn't give a fuck. You know, if he cared, Arteta would be gone. Because Stan likes to win when it comes to his American franchises. Arteta would be gone by now. But he doesn't care. So we're doing this younger model or whatever. They'll probably give him one more big window, I think, before they start asking questions. Because they will have spent a lot more money than they probably expected to. You know, they probably would have expected a trophy here or there. They expected to win the chip, expected to win the championship, you know, and we haven't done that yet. But yeah, I don't necessarily feel like until like Josh actually starts asking questions, then, you know, Edu and Arteta are under any sort of pressure. And they also behave like people that are not under pressure. People that are under pressure don't buy Havertz. That, to me, that is like the perfect indication that Arteta is under no pressure whatsoever, because he was allowed to buy Havertz and actually thought to buy him. Because if I'm Arteta and I feel like I'm under pressure, I'm actually on the phone trying to convince Frankie de Jong to come to this fucking club. I'm selling Thomas Partey and I'm giving Frankie de Jong his wages and then some. That's what I'm doing if I'm under pressure, because I want to win. I want to win, you know? I'm bringing in a striker. I'm not playing. If Ramsdale has to be back there and he's chucking in the back of his net, so be it, because at least I have somebody out there that can put the ball in the back of the net, you know? But he's not under pressure, so he feels like it's okay to have Nketiah in the team because he runs hard. He feels like it's okay to have Jesus out there playing like Lacazette because he's not under pressure, you know? He's not under pressure. So, yeah. Aegon says, should we move Trossard on as well? I think Saka, Nelly, Tony, Jesus, and Neto will be enough. That's definitely something that I've thought about as well. There's 200 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel. But yeah, like Trossard, Trossard is a player that is a stopgap. So, you know, I'm not going to sit here as like somebody that loves Trossard. I think he's fantastic as like a squad player. He's not somebody that I feel like we have to hang on to forever. But equally, I don't think Arsenal are, again, they're not proactive enough to even, I don't think to consider moving him on to make space for a better younger player. Jorginho and Trossard were stopgaps. So they should stay as stopgaps. And the only way to make sure that you don't lose a lot of money on those stopgaps is to sell them before it becomes obvious. So I'm not like, I wouldn't move Trossard on because I don't think he's a good player. I would move him on because he's a stopgap. And if like Saudi or fucking, you know, somebody in Italy or somebody like that wanted Trossard and they were willing to give us 20 million for him, I'd probably bite your hand off for it. Because in a year, you won't be able to get that because it'll be in the last year of his deal, you know, because I think he'll have 18 months left after this season. So yeah, I'm not so like, I would actually be okay with that, you know, because Trossard is not a part of, to me, the group that has to work. The group that has to work is Saka and Martinelli. We need to add on to those two right now. Those are the only two that I feel like in that front line are a part of our long-term future. That might sound harsh, but I just feel like we can move on Eddie and Trossard and Jesus and bring in 3 players and be much better, you know? So yeah. But it's just not, he could stay another year, you know, we can move him on, or he could stay for another year. He's not somebody that there's other players in this team that could definitely be moved on in front of him. You know, I love Trossard though. Cameron says it's Arteta and Edu that lets them down. The Cronkies don't recruit the players. I'm sorry to say it, but we ain't winning nothing with this manager. I mean, it still comes down to the Cronkies though. They still have to want to move on Arteta and Edu. They don't. When you're the head of a company, you're in charge. If the company is shit and goes bankrupt, even if you weren't in the building and you weren't in the meetings and making those decisions because you left it up to your employees, ultimately the person that owns the company is responsible. And so, yeah, no, like Edu and Arteta buy the players, so it's on them, but it's on the Cronkies to decide whether or not this is good enough, it's sustainable, if it's moving in the right direction or at fast enough. So it's still down to the Cronkies no matter what, because it's your club. It's your club. And I still don't feel like, I feel like they're kind of comfortable with the young group, young manager formula because it gives you more time, it gives you more buy-in from the fans, and there's less like win, 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 win now, you know? Now, whether or not the Cronkies will continue to keep fronting the money for this without any payoff, I don't know. But the Cronkies tend to win something at some point. So I think they will start asking questions, but do I think it's right this second? No. But yeah, they're still responsible. It's their club. They don't have to be in the room. When you're the owner, it's up to you. It's up to you to make the decisions to make it better. Kenthea says, Tierney injured again, subbed in the 39th minute. I said that. I'm watching it right now. He definitely did come off. Gunner for Life says, how in the world did Bellingham go to Madrid instead of Arsenal? Every player grows up wanting to go to Madrid. Life of Baj says, a player with crazy allegations and has been injured for 50% of the time has been here is someone you need to ease out of your team. I will not speak on the matter. Nuances of Faith says the buck stops with the Cronkies. They're culpable. I agree. Naz says, big up you, Jess. I saw your story with how you started supporting Arsenal. Love that. Thank you. I love this club. Like, they are my addiction, so rain or shine, no matter if we're winning or losing, I love this club no matter what. And I love creating content around the club as well. Unknown C says, you don't invest and then turn your face away without assessment. Cronkies aren't truly serious with AFC and winning, not with the setup. If I would be very surprised, like, let's say we finish third or fourth, and we're, let's say 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points away from, whoever wins. And we go out in the quarterfinals of the Champions League, or we go out to Porto. I would be so surprised if we started off next season with a new manager. I would be shocked. I would be shooketh if it happened, because it just doesn't feel like something that this club is it doesn't even seem like it's on the table. Everybody is comfortable, everybody is happy, there's no pressure, everybody is calm, And so now, personally for me, if I was the Cronkies, I would be on the first thing smoking to England to have a chit chat with everybody about whether or not we're going in the right direction. Not because Arteta's a terrible manager or anything like that, but I want to know how we can get the most out of all the money that we've spent, because we've spent quite a bit on this new project, but we haven't won anything yet. Right? And I'm talking about this like if we get to the summer and we haven't won anything. So is it that we need to spend, way more on this team? Or do we need to get another manager that can get more out of the group and then give him a striker and a midfielder and see what they can do, So yeah, that's what I would do from, with my little experience. But I don't feel like we're anywhere near that when it comes to the Cronkies. I feel like if we finish fourth and we go out of the Champions League, they'll just call it a season where we just wanted to establish ourselves in the top 4. And now next season, we're going to go, That's how I kind of feel. Here to There says, not sure about that. Just the environment, even at the Emirates on match day, is so different. Just like how Arteta is starting to wear the stress. But think about how tumultuous it'll have to get. I think grumbles and quiet Emirates is a lot different than actual like action where the fans are coming in with Arteta out banners. I still think we're quite far away from that. So I agree with you. I think the environment sucks, and there's definitely no hype or excitement or energy about this season. How could you be excited? Like, from this preseason, like it was already there that I don't think anybody believed that we were going to be able to get better from what they had seen in the transfer window. I think that was a big thing. But I still think we're quite far away from what it would take toxicity-wise to get him out, Arteta, because I don't think it's just going to be keyboard warriors out there that's going to be enough. The Cronkies would have to come to that decision on their own. And the only way that it could be speed up is if the fans really turn. And I just don't see the Emirates turning. I can see groans and I can see empty seats, but I definitely don't see Arteta out banners at the end of the season if we don't win anything. I just don't think Arsenal fans are about that life, Second Soj says, agree 100%. The front line requires a little bit of work. We need some money to spend on that front line. We need at least two or three attacking players. We're not going to be able to get them all this summer, but we need to get them. We haven't spent enough money. Here to there says, agreed, just hate to say it, but I was deflated on the season right after the Havertz signing. Winning Way says, bro, I told you Arteta set him up to get injured playing CDM and then right back in the same damn time, and then he came back from injury. I mean, you can blame the injuries to Thomas Partey on Arteta, but if you're honest, even when he was handled with kid gloves, he still got injured. And when he played, number 6 on his own, he's been injured almost the entire time he's been at Arsenal. So I'm not sure you can blame. Maybe you could try to blame his most recent injury on Arteta, but the likelihood is that Partey just got injured because he's injury prone. He just is. Second Soj says, in my view, the fans aren't applying pressure. Liverpool fans know how to turn the screw. Arsenal fans almost always accept whatever is served up to them and lap up the club's PR. Andrew says the banners will come if we don't win anything. That's a fact. I don't think so. I definitely think there's a massive difference between the fans in the stadium and the fans online. I think the fans online are going to turn, but do you really think the Cronkies are sitting there on Twitter looking at the shit? No. I just don't really see it. But if it happens, I will definitely sit here and say that I got it wrong. I think we could definitely finish 4th and go out of the Champions League in the quarterfinals or some shit like that. And yeah, there'll probably be some empty seats and some grumbles, but the Arteta out banners, I just don't know if the fans in the stands are that discontent. I think they'll just not go, I think we'll see empty seats. But I would like to see maybe the fans be a little bit more proactive. I would like if you actually really don't want the manager in, I would love to see some mobilization, because I do think it's really easy to want the manager out and not do anything about it. I would like to see the fans be a little bit more thorny about it. I was actually really surprised that at the end of the season when I went to the Wolves game, how happy-lappy it was. It was very much so Arteta stood up there and did his statement or his little, his little speech, and everybody was just happy. I mean, there was a little bit of a disappointment, but yeah, I don't really think the fans are going to turn. Not the way that, they did against Emery. HD says Havertz will still be at Arsenal while Arteta gets sacked. Mikel, that's your own doing. Tashima says, if we go out against Porto and Spurs and Villa finish above us, the banners might come out. Yeah, maybe if Spurs do finish above us, that could be the one. That could be the one. That could be the one. But also, what the Life of Baj is saying is that the players turned on Emery, and I also think that that's significant. The players also, I think you definitely get sacked a lot quicker when the players, you lose the locker room, you lose the dressing room. I'm not sure that we're there, but it could happen. It could happen. It could happen. But let's see what happens from now until the end of the season. Let's see what happens from now until the end of the season. But guys, this was a fun show. Really appreciate you guys always supporting and coming out and all that kind of stuff. I really appreciate it. Make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel on your way out. I'm actively scheduling the next couple of shows because obviously we don't play until Tuesday, so we have to get some more stuff out there. the post match for Nottingham Forest, that's usually a pre-recorded podcast, the Cannon Club, is actually going to be live. We're working on that, so hopefully you guys will like that. And then obviously we'll have some other stuff in between. Trying to get in contact with Diluted. If you guys can let him know on his stream tomorrow that Jessica's trying to get in contact with him to do a stream later on this week, that would be great. Do my job for me, but because he's so hard to get a hold of. But either way, I enjoyed this, and I enjoy the fact that I'm going to get to talk to you guys in the next couple of days as well. Make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel and set your notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.